Jasoranandana Brajajanarandana Sonatira Bonachari Jamadira Bonachari Jai Paripurjika Stotara Sadashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Paripurjika Stotara Sadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shri Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai. Navadvip Dhamma Ki Jai. Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiyayat Nastapareshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhagavati Bhakshiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 8, Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Text 1. There's no introduction, so I won't read it. Maitreya Uvacha Satsavaniyo Vata Puruvamsho Yal Lokapalo Bhagavat Pradhanaha Bahu Vite Ajita Kirti Malam Pade Nutana Ayasya Avikshnam Maitreya Uvacha Satsevano Bhatta Puruvamsho Yalokapalo Bhagavat Pradhanaha Bahuvite Haijita Krita Malan Pade Pade Nutanayasya Viksham Maitreya Uvacha Satsevanayo Bhattapuro Vamsho Yalokapalo Bhagavat Pradhanaha Babhuvite Hajita Kirti Malan Pade Pade Nutana Yasya Viksham Maitreya Uvacha Sri Maitreya Muni said, Satsevaniyaha, worthy to serve the pure devotees. Bhatta, certainly. Puruvamshaha, the descendants of King Puru. Yet, because. Lokabalaha, the kings are. Bhagavat Pradhanaha, chiefly devoted to the personality of Godhead. Bahuvita, you are also born. Iha, in this. Ajita, the Lord who is unconquerable. Kirti Malam, chain of transcendental activities. Pade Pade, step by step. Nutanayasi, becoming newer and newer. Abhikshnam, always. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotee because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. Translation again. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotee because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious, because they were not attached to impersonal Brahman or to the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. They were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura the most desirable, because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. The verse again, the great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, the royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotee, because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. So this verse and the accompanying purport are distinguishing a little bit between the genetics and qualification. The so-called caste system has become, the word in the Bhagavatam was used, vitiated or wasted, because people think that if they're born in a particular family, they have the rights to be whatever that family is, Brahmins or Kshatriyas or Vaishnavas or Sudras. But there's also the notion that being born in a particular family is of merit. And it's discussed here. Maitreya is saying to Vidura that you are also born in that family. It is wonderful because of your attempt. The transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment. So sometimes genetics plays a very important role, although we're taught not to become attached to our blood relatives. But in some cases, it's very important. As is mentioned here, Puru was a very important person. Actually, he gave his youth to his father, and he was a very extraordinary person for doing that. And when Gopinath Pattanayaka was about to be executed, Lord Chaitanya didn't want to intervene because the king of that area, King Patraprudra, was the king, and Lord Chaitanya said that I don't want to intervene because I don't want to have anything to do with the king, who was a pound and shilling pence man or a dollars and cents man. But in the end, because of repeated requests by his disciples, he did intervene, and he told the king, and the king was surprised that Gopinath Pattanayaka was about to be executed, because he had a sort of a conflictual relationship with one of the princes, one of Patraprudra's sons. So the king said that anyone, because he is related to Ramananda Roy and Bhavananda Roy, the king said that anyone in that family is very dear to me. And so the Jags played an important role, and he not only reinstated him as in the job he had as a tax collector, and he was violating Vedic principles. He was seeing dancing girls, which is against regulated principles. But somehow or other, the king excused him and reinstated him in his former position, and gave him a gift, and gave him his former salary, even slightly increased it. So the king had said that anyone who was born in that family is extraordinary. And so it's being said here that even that the royal dynasty of Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotee. Vidura was a pure devotee because he was Yamaraj in a previous lifetime. And it's interesting that the Lord has also, it's a very complex philosophy, and the Lord has exhibited this, and Prabhupada has said that we should study the concept of simultaneous oneness and difference every year in Mayapur by the leaders of society, and it should be discussed threadbare. So it's not a simple thing. And demons can become devotees, and devotees can become demons. As we have seen, one of a person who was very close to Prabhupada and serving Prabhupada as a personal assistant and secretary had become a demon, and Prabhupada wrote a letter to all the temple presidents that I regret to inform you that our godbrother so-and-so and so-and-so has become an envious snake. And I was in London at the time, and this happened, I think, in the United States, and Prabhupada was very far away, and I thought, well, I'm glad I'm not in that country because I don't want to associate with that guy anymore. But and then later on he asked Prabhupada, I mean, continuing his offenses, he asked Prabhupada if he could recommend him to if he could recommend another guru for him to take shelter of. So this happens sometimes. Sometimes devotees become demons, and sometimes demons become devotees. There was also a case of Chitraketu was a very opulent and relevant king, because he made a somewhat offensive remark to Lord Shiva. He kind of laughed when Lord Shiva was having an intimate association with his wife, and therefore he had to become a demon, and he became Vitrasura. And Vitrasura, even though he was born in a demonic body, he was preaching Krishna consciousness to Indra in such a way. Even though he was being defeated by Indra, he was nonetheless a devotee. And we also learned that Hiranyakashipu had been a devotee in his past life. He had been Jaya, one of the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, and yet he was very demonic. He was a personification of demonic person. But and it was mentioned in a class that Lord Nrsingadev, and there's a picture here of him sitting on the throne of Hiranyakashipu, and he sat on the throne of Hiranyakashipu because Hiranyakashipu had been in his past life a devotee of Krishna and had lived in Vaikuntha. And as you know, he was given a choice to take birth in the material world 7 times as his devotee, as Krishna's devotee, and 3 times as Krishna's enemy. And the reason he selected the enemy was it was quicker. He could go back to Godhead a lot faster. And also because there are no demonic persons in the spiritual world. In order to engage in a battle with demons, Krishna has to come to the material world, and there are demons in the material world, like Hiranyakashipu and others. But Hiranyakashipu had a certain element of devotion in him, even though he was very demonic. This happens. Sometimes people who are very saintly become very demonic by Krishna's arrangement. People can go either way. And this is an example of Krishna's mercy. Sometimes it's said that Krishna's mercy is inconceivable or causeless mercy. And sometimes Krishna would intervene, but generally he didn't intervene because he didn't want to deal with pounds, shillings, and pencemen, or people who were what he called rogues and plunderers and thieves many times, because in a way, Prabhupada was like a policeman. He was calling the spades the spades and the rogues, and he was very dismissive of people who were inimical towards Krishna. And even Kamsa, who was Krishna conscious, even though he was thinking about Krishna in a negative way, he didn't possess bhakti, but he was Krishna conscious in his own way. And there was the case of Putana, who came to kill Krishna, and he was a very good friend and relative of Kamsa, and yet his attitude was to kill Krishna. So he was demonic in a way. And then there was the case of Putana, who came to kill Krishna, and Krishna liberated her as well because she appeared as Krishna's mother. She wanted to nurture him as a mother. So she was also not only liberated, but given the position in the spiritual world of Krishna's mother. So the spiritual world can sometimes become part of Krishna's causeless mercy. But in general, Krishna does not come for ordinary reasons. And when he comes, he says, Pritnanaya sadhunam vinachaya chidushkritam, that his main reason is to support and protect the devotees. His other reasons are to kill demons. But when he kills demons, he does it almost nonchalantly. That's not his main purpose. His main purpose is to protect the devotees, and his secondary purpose is to kill the demonic persons who are inimical towards devotees. So there are Mahajans are exceptional because we consult them. When we read Shastra, sometimes we have questions, or we get bewildered, or we don't understand some of the things that happen because the philosophy is very complex. And it is said in the Upadeshamrita, Dadati Pratiganati Guya Makati Prichtati. Guya means secret, or this is a very secret thing. And it's secret because in order to understand the teachings of the Shastra, it's necessary to sometimes consult with people that we consider more advanced than we are. And the Dati Grati Banati teaches us that we have to associate. It's very important. So it was designated when Krishna consciousness movement started that there be a class each day, not only during the weekdays but on the weekends, because everyone learns a lot from association. So association is really important. There are two things that are really important. One is studying the Shastra and reading the Shastra regularly, and the second thing is association with people that we feel that are superior to us, that are more realized than we are. So the two things are very important. So if we don't understand anything, it's sometimes explained by people who are giving class. And Prabhupada often said in 1970, after he completed translating the Nectar of Devotion, that it should be read repeatedly. It should be read repeatedly, he was saying on the day that he completed his translation. I don't know if it was the very day, but after shortly he said that the book was available, Nectar of Devotion was available, and anyone should read this book continuously, because if we have many questions, we shouldn't necessarily ask them, but we can read and get the answers in Nectar of Devotion and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. The thing that separates the bona fide teachers or acharyas from others, ordinary people, is that they quote Shastra. But even quoting Shastra doesn't necessarily solve all our problems, because many people quote Shastra, and there's a saying that the devil courts Shastra, the devil courts Scripture. And when one of the presidents of the United States was criticized for sometimes quoting Scripture, but had a very demonic quality. So the point is that what separates a bona fide teacher is that person doesn't say anything that's not even in the Shastra. And even what's in the Shastra sometimes is misleading, it's incorrect. So therefore, it's necessary for us to ask questions of people who are realized, or who we consider are more realized than we are. It is said that we should make friends with devotees. In the 11th canto, there's a verse that says we should make friends with devotees. And this is not easy. And according to because there are a lot of confidential secrets in Krishna consciousness, as Guyam is mentioned as a secret, that it can't be understood by people who are ordinary. It has to be understood, as Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, by people who are devoted to Krishna. And we have to discuss these things and over again with people who are more advanced, and take shelter of such people. And it's not possible to take shelter of all devotees, because some devotees are becoming demons. Some devotees become demons, and some devotees are there just for the food or for the camaraderie or the music, and they have certain ideas that become more prominent than Krishna consciousness, and therefore after a time they even leave the Krishna consciousness front line of the Krishna consciousness movement, because they're very attached to other things. And this goes on all along. But Prabhupada told us that if we carry on our Krishna consciousness, that even though there are many enemies in the world, the world can be changed for the better. Not that there are not going to be enemies. There are always going to be enemies. And he ended one lecture, I think I mentioned this by saying that Johnny Walker is still going strong. And how a sadhu knew what Johnny Walker was is very mysterious, but he probably saw an advertisement for that whiskey in the subways or something in New York. So anyway, the verse in the Bhagavad Gita and in the 11th canto, Ishvara Tada Dineshu, says that we should make friends with devotees, but we can't make friends with all devotees. We have to make friends with devotees that we trust, either our own relatives, our own friends, our own spouses, or people that we trust. And there may not be maybe hundreds of them. There may only be one or two. But we have to trust somebody, and we have to consult with somebody and that's how we advance in Krishna consciousness, to take shelter of people who are more advanced than we are, and to ask those kinds of questions. And even though Vidura was highly elevated, he had been, in the past life, he had been Yamaraj, still he was very, very much praiseworthy of Maitreya, who Maitreya was considered to be a very, very advanced devotee. So if we ask questions of these devotees, then we can find out what the Shastras actually mean. And we can't depend completely only on Shastra, because Shastra is sometimes misleading. The devil cites scripture. And Prabhupada has told us that even there are mantras that are not bona fide, because even they mention Krishna, they're not bona fide. And how do we know that they're not bona fide? By consulting with people who are more advanced than we are. Because we can cite scripture and be wrong. So I think we're going to have to stop now. We're getting towards the end. If there's any comments or questions that anyone has, go ahead.
Haribol Maharaj. I read somewhere, maybe you can comment on it if you've read it too, that even though it had demons like Kamsa and Hiranyakashipu, they still followed the Varnashram system, even though they sort of didn't like the Vaishnavas, but still they were within the order of the Varnashram system. So compared to what we have today, where there is nothing there, just something that's like a system that's sort of based on atheism. So
it's interesting that in days of yore, the people were a lot more religious. Even the Mohammedans, who are often considered to be dangerous meat eaters and all that, and many Hindus dislike them, although that's not proper. But they had a devotional streak in them. There was a group of plunderers that we read about this in Chaitanya Bhagavat. They were dacoits, or hoodlums, or criminals, who were going to steal all of Lord Nityananda's jewelry. And they came several times, and on the third time, Krishna, or Lord Nityananda, who's also Balaram, arranged for them to have to ford through a moat that was full of mosquitoes and dangerous biting insects. And then the head dacoit went and confessed everything that he was planning to do to Lord Nityananda, and he became a devotee of Lord Nityananda. So there's an example of someone who is very demonic, who becomes a devotee. And in days of yore, it wasn't that uncommon that people could transform themselves from demonic to devotee. It actually happened. But in this day and age, it's a very rare occurrence, because things have become very corrupt in Kali Yuga, as we all know, and as we encounter in our everyday life. But in the past, things were a lot different. And even though there was a lot of animosity between Hindus and Muslims, there was very little actual violence. The violence occurred mostly by creating a separate state of West Pakistan. And that's when literally millions of people died in riots. And we still don't know how many were killed, whether it was hundreds, or whether it was thousands, or whether it was millions, because people don't want to admit that it was a very ghastly scene. And Prabhupada has even told us that there were dead bodies strewn all over Calcutta at that time. That was 1947. Anyways, it's a very intelligent observation that there were people that were pious. And Prabhupada used to say that Mohammedans used to come to his house, to his parents' house, regularly, and give coins to the children. They had an element of goodness in them, and they were even though they were of a different persuasion, and they were meat eaters, and some of them there was a natural affinity between friendliness between Hindus and Muslims, and it wasn't until the foreigners made it. They made a big mistake by dividing the Hindus and the Muslims by creating West Pakistan, and then making Bangladesh was a good move. But there was a lot of evil going on at that time, even though they had a streak of Krishna conscious intelligence. So any other points or questions? Yes? Ram?
I don't have the verse in front of me, Maharaj, but it describes how Vidura sees Maitreya as greatly elevated and a saintly person. But in today's verse, also Maitreya is saying he really likes to associate with Vidura. There's a sort of reciprocation going on. Mm-hmm. I thought it's sort of like, it describes Vaishnava etiquette very nicely.
Yeah, the etiquette is a critical feature that we have to observe. I mean, we don't have to, but we do observe, and we give things with our right hand. We like prashadam. We're very friendly to everyone, even non-devotees, because that's etiquette, and that's part of Krishna consciousness. So, and what happens though is people often transform themselves from demons to devotees, from devotees to demons, but there's a rapport that even though Yamaraj is very advanced and can know what we're all thinking, because that's a very advanced position of someone whose duty is to punish the wrongdoers. Still, he took the lower position of and praised Maitreya for being greater than he was, even though in a way he was more advanced. But following the etiquette is very important. Yes. This microphone is so that people in Johannesburg can hear you.
Hare Krishna, Johannesburg. Just talking on about those Vaishnava traditions that you were saying. So I just want to try and understand something, because now I see people who are left-handed think that it's okay to do things with their left hand. I just wanted to know if you could make a comment about that. Is it traditionally that we have to use our right hand, or is it okay for the left-handed people to chant their rounds or serve out with their left hand?
Krishna consciousness is more than just a philosophy and book knowledge. It's a culture. And part of the culture of Krishna consciousness is to always give and accept with the right hand. And we don't point, this is known as the index finger in America. It's called the accusing finger in other parts of the world where the Vedic culture is prominent. And so when we ask people directions in that part of the world, instead of saying it's that way, they say it's that way. Because they know that it's improper or a violation of etiquette to point with this finger. So there's a lot of things that, and we've learned to say things like, we've learned to eat pakoras and jalebis and things like that. That's all part of the culture of Krishna consciousness. But we didn't even, when I say we, I'm talking about myself and most of the people in this room, we had no idea what a pakora was, or what a jalebi was, or what a puri was. But we now see that they're, not only we know what they are, but we like them. And we give them to other people. And therefore, Krishna consciousness is sometimes known as the kitchen religion. And this is what they're going to call the restaurant in Auckland. That's according to Kala Sambar. It's going to be called the kitchen religion. But that's very important to see the cult. And Prabhupada wrote to Sali Agarwal when he first came to the United States that they should open a restaurant in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, because it would make them money. And they didn't do it, but it would have been very good, because that's a very affluent part of the world. At that time it was, anyway. So any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you.